The phantom of the screaming tunnel, Ontario. The match went out before I even touched the wall. I hadn't blown on it. There was no wind. The flame simply died. Snuffed out as though invisible fingers pinched it shut. And in the instant of darkness that followed, a scream rose from the stone around me. Not ahead. Not behind. Not outside. The sound bled directly from the tunnel walls themselves, raw and shrill, as though the stone had trapped the agony of a dying child and chose that exact moment to release it. I dropped the match. My legs wanted to run, but the scream didn't tell them to move. It filled the tunnel, high and piercing, echoing again and again until I couldn't tell whether it was in the air or in my skull. And then, just as suddenly as it began, silence crushed everything. The dripping water, the scrape of my shoes, even my heartbeat seemed swallowed. I wasn't supposed to be there at night. Nobody is. The screaming tunnel, hidden in the back roads of Niagara Falls, looks harmless by day, a short stone passageway beneath abandoned railway tracks, barely wide enough for a carriage. But when the sun falls and shadows stretch across the fields, it changes. People say the walls breathe. People say if you light a match in its center, the flame will always go out. And people say that when it does, you'll hear her scream. The girl who burned alive inside. I wanted to prove it was just a story. That's why I went. That's always why people go. But the first second I stepped inside, my stomach turned to ice. The tunnel isn't long, maybe 50 meters. But inside, every sound is magnified. Your shoes grind too loud. Your breath feels borrowed, and the dark at the far end seems endless. My flashlight quivered against damp stone, catching streaks of black moss and water stains that looked too much like handprints. The deeper I went, the colder the air became, dropping faster than it should have. It wasn't the night air anymore. It was cellar cold. Grave cold. Halfway through, I stopped walking. My light flickered. My ears strained. For a moment, I thought I heard a girl's sob, soft and uneven, somewhere ahead. Then it was gone, as though the tunnel itself swallowed it back. I told myself it was water dripping. A trick of the echo, but every hair on my arms rose. I put the flashlight behind it. No human tremor. It tore through me like rusted metal, echoing and re-echoing until it filled the tunnel with something more than sound. It was grief, terror, rage, and despair all at once. My legs gave way. The match dropped. My palms hit the damp floor. When the scream stopped, I thought it was over. I thought the legend was done, but then I smelled it. Smoke. Faint, acrid, the stench of burning wood, and Bennett, it's something worse. Sweet, putrid, unmistakable, the smell of burning flesh. My body froze, my lungs locked, my flashlight snapped back on, and in its beam, I saw it, black scorch marks crawling up the tunnel walls, spreading like veins. My light caught the ceiling. It was streaked with soot that hadn't been there a moment before. The tunnel wasn't stone anymore. It was wood. Burning. Cracking. Splintering with flames. And in the middle of it, a girl. She stood maybe 10 feet ahead, her nightgown charred, her skin blistered and half melted, black hair clinging in burnt patches. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She only stared at me with hollow eyes, wide and wet, like she'd been screaming for centuries and still couldn't stop. I couldn't look away. My brain screamed to run, but my body knelt there, paralyzed. Her jaw opened slowly, unnaturally, too wide, and instead of words, another scream poured out. But this time it wasn't sound. It was fire. Her scream came out as a rush of flames, orange and blinding, licking the walls, filling the tunnel, racing toward me. I scrambled backward, my hands tearing on stone, my shoes slipping on wet patches. The fire chased me, clawed at me, singed my hair. My flashlight hit the ground and cracked, plunging everything into stuttering dark and light. My screams joined hers. I don't remember leaving the tunnel. When I woke, I was sprawled in the grass outside. The night air cooled against my sweat. The tunnel stood silent behind me. No fire. No smoke. No girl. Just stone. Just shadows. My flashlight lay cracked at the entrance. Heat's beam dead, but on my shirt, the smell of smoke lingered, and on my palms, faint black streaks marked my skin, as though burned fingers had grabbed me in the dark. I told myself I imagined it. That's what everyone does. They say it's just folklore, a story told to frighten children. But then the dream started. Every night since, I waked to the sound of screaming. Not outside. Not in the hole. In my ears. In my skull. Sometimes I wake choking on smoke, gagging on the stench of ash. Sometimes I wake to find my bedsheets singed at the edges, blackened as though small flames licked them while I slept. And sometimes, worst of all, I wake to see her, the girl, standing in the corner of my room, her skin cracked, her eyes hollow, her mouth trembling as though ready to release that same fire again. You shut my eyes, I pray she'll vanish, but when I open them, she's closer. Always closer. They say the screaming tunnel is cursed because a girl was locked inside it by her father, set ablaze to punish her. Others say it was a farmer who burned her to silence her cries after an assault. No one knows the truth, but everyone agrees on one thing: her scream never left those walls. It followed me home, and maybe it'll follow you, too, because once you hear it, once the flame dies and the match goes dark, the scream doesn't stop. It waits. It waits, in the silence, in the walls of your house, in the shadows of your room. One day, when you strike a match, maybe to light a candle, maybe to light a stove, you'll see it sputter, die, and then you'll smell smoke that doesn't belong. You'll hear a scream that doesn't come from any living throat, and when you do, you'll know she's already standing behind you. The smiling man of West Virginia, he was already there when I turned the corner, standing under the sickly orange glow of a flickering streetlight, motionless, waiting. At first I thought he was just another man walking home late, but then I saw his face. He was smiling. Not a polite, fleeting smile. Not the kind you give a stranger in passing. No, this was a stretched, unnatural grin, carved into his face like a wound. His lips pulled too wide, his teeth bared in the cold light, and his eyes locked on mine. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to run, but my body wouldn't listen. The night was silent. The only sound, the low buzz of the lamp above him. He didn't move. He only smiled. I forced myself to walk, keeping my eyes forward, pretending he wasn't there. But as I passed, I felt it, his head turning, following me, the grin stretching wider, impossibly wide, until it no longer looked human. I quickened my pace. The streets of that small West Virginia town were empty at that hour. No cars, no open shops, no neighbors peeking out their windows. Just me and him. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to see, but I heard it, footsteps, slow at first, measured, deliberate, then faster, matching mine. When I finally dared to glance over my shoulder, he wasn't walking. He was dancing. His limbs flailed and jerky, puppet-like movements, as though invisible strings yanked his arms and legs. He twirled, skipped, spun, in grotesque rhythm, all while his head stayed perfectly upright, his eyes locked on me, and that green, that horribly endless grin never faltered. My chest burned as I ran. The houses blurred. My shoes slammed against the pavement, but behind me, the sound of his shoes echoed mine. Closer, closer, and always, always that smile. I ducked into an alley, pressed myself against the wall, and held my breath. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would give me away. For a moment there was silence, and I let myself believe I had lost him. But then the sound came, a soft tapping, not footsteps, not running, just a slow, rhythmic tap. Tap, tap, like fingers drumming against stone. I looked up, and there he was, at the mouth of the alley, standing completely still. His grin glistened in the dark, his head cocked unnaturally to one side, and his eyes never blinked. He didn't chase this time. He didn't need to. He only stood, smiling, watching. I backed away slowly, praying for a door, a window, any escape. But the alley was a dead end. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I was trapped. And then he moved, not like a man, not like anything alive. His body snapped forward in impossible jerks, his legs bending wrong, his arms swinging like broken joints. He didn't walk. He didn't run. He lurched, closer and closer, his grin widening with each step until his teeth seemed to gleam like knives. I pressed myself against the wall, whispering prayers, tears stinging my eyes, and just as his shadow stretched over me, he stopped, inches away, his face so close I could smell the rot of his breath. His grin twitched, his eyes bulged, and then he leaned back. Slowly, deliberately, he tilted his head to the side, studied me like a hunter studying prey, and then without a sound he danced away. I collapsed to the ground, shaking, broken, unable to move until the sun began to rise. I thought it was over. I told myself it was a nightmare, a trick of exhaustion, a hallucination. But the stories I heard later told me otherwise. They say he has been in West Virginia for decades. Some call him a demon. Others believe he's the ghost of a man who lost his mind long ago. And some whisper that he isn't human at all, that he's something older, something that wears a man's shape to lure you in. Everyone's story is the same. A man on an empty road, a smile too wide, a body that moves wrong, and always, that grin. One boy said he saw him outside his bedroom window, standing in the yard at midnight, smiling up at him through the glass. He swore the man didn't move for hours. Just milet. And when the boy woke in the morning, his window was open, though he swore he had locked it. A woman told of driving home late at night, only to see him standing in the middle of the road. She slammed on the brakes, her tires screeching, but the smiling man didn't flinch, didn't blink. He only danced, slowly, in the beams of her headlights. She swerved into the ditch rather than hit him. By the time she crawled back to the road, bruised and bleeding, he was gone. And then there are the stories that don't end with escape. A girl from Morgantown vanished walking home one night. They found her shoes, her bag, her phone all in neat order on the sidewalk, but no sign of her. Witnesses say she was last seen near an alley, with a tall man who smiled too wide. Another man was found dead in his home, his body twisted into a grotesque position, his face frozen in a rictus grin so wide it split the skin of his cheeks. The doctors called it a seizure, but his neighbors remembered him whispering about a stranger who had followed him home. A man with a smile. The worst part is this: once you've seen him, once you've met his eyes, you never truly escape. That night, when I saw him under the streetlight, I thought I was lucky. I thought I had survived. But days later, I caught myself seeing him everywhere. In the crowd at the market, in the reflection of a store window, in the shadows of my own house. Always smiling, always waiting. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the floorboards was his step. Every draft of cold air against my neck was his breath. And some nights, I woke to find myself smiling in my sleep. Smiling so wide, my jaw ached. They say the smiling man doesn't kill you right away. He waits. He breaks you down. He smiles at you until you smile back, until your mind splits, until you can't tell where your grin ends. And now, as I whisper these words, I feel it. That urge in my cheeks, that twitch in my lips, that pain in my jaw as something forces me to smile, wider and wider, until it feels like my face will tear apart. I know he's here, in the room, watching, grinning, waiting for me to join him. And maybe, after hearing this, you'll start to feel it too. Maybe tonight, when you're alone, when the house grows silent and the shadows stretch long, you'll hear the soft sound of tapping. And when you look up, you'll see him, standing there, smiling. And if you do, don't smile back, because once you do, he'll never leave. The first time I saw its eyes, I thought they were lanterns. Two burning red orbs, swaying low across the coastal path, bobbing as if a man carried them. But the light was wrong. It was alive. It pulsed, it stared straight through me, and before I could move, the shape stepped out of the fog. Not a man, not anything human, but a monstrous black hound, its body too long, its back arched, its fur glistening as though wet with sea spray and blood. Its eyes burned like coals, and the air around it reeked of sulfur. It didn't growl. It didn't snarl. It only watched me, silent, waiting. And then, as I stumbled backward, its jaws opened wide enough to snap bone in half, and the fog carried a sound I'll never forget. The low, echoing howl of the black shuck. People in East Anglia whisper about it still. They say it prowls the coasts, the marshes, the villages. Some say it's the devil himself, sent to collect souls. Others claim it's the spirit of a hound left to drown in the marsh, returning to drag others down. But one thing never changes. When you see the black shuck, death follows. Not always immediately. Sometimes a day later, sometimes a week, but always. That night, I ran. My boots slipped on whetstone. My lungs tore with cold air. But the sound of claws followed me, steady, measured, never rushing, as though the beast knew I couldn't escape. I reached the cottage door and slammed it shut. My chest heaved, my hands shook, and when I dared to glance through the window, there was nothing outside but fog. I told myself I imagined it. The mind plays tricks in sea mist. That's what I said. That's what I wanted to believe. But the next morning, the neighbor 2 houses down was found dead, his face frozen in a mask of terror, his eyes wide, his body twisted as though something crushed his chest. No marks, no wounds, just fear and death. And that was only the beginning. The black shuck has haunted East Anglia for centuries. The stories stretch back to the 1500s, when it burst into the churches of Blithburgh and Bungay. During a storm, they say it charged through the doors, its eyes blazing, its claws tearing gouges in the wooden pews. The congregation fell to their knees, praying, screaming, weeping as the beast stalked the aisles. 2 worshippers were struck dead where they knelt, their bodies blackened as if lightning had burned them. The shuck left claw marks in the church walls that can still be seen today. Generations have tried to dismiss it as folklore, a tale to scare children away from the cliffs at night. But every village, every family along the coast has its own story. A grandmother who saw it pacing at the edge of a field before she fell ill. A fisherman who glimpsed it on the rocks before his boat capsized. A carriage driver who swore it followed him for miles, its breath steaming against the glass, until he crashed into the marsh and drowned. The pattern never changes. Red eyes in the dark, the howl on the wind, and then death. I used to think I could explain it. That's why I went looking. That's why I carried a lantern into the foggy marshes near. Dunwich why. I followed the faint paw prints, pressed deep into the mud, too deep for any normal animal, as though something massive and heavy had walked there. The prints led me past the reeds, into the black pools, where the water never ripples, where even birds refuse to fly. The deeper I went, the quieter the world became. My lantern hissed and sputtered. The air smelled of rot and salt, and then I heard it. Claws on stone. Steady, slow, deliberate. The fog thickened until I couldn't see my own hands, but the eyes cut through it. 2 burning coals, rising, lowering, shifting closer with every sound of claws. The shuck stepped into view. Its head was massive, its jaws wide enough to engulf a manhole. Its fur was matted and dripping, as though it had just crawled out of the sea. When it breathed, steam curled into the night like smoke from a fire. I froze. My body refused to obey. The hound circled me, its red eyes glowing brighter with every step. Its paws pressed into the earth, and the ground shuddered beneath its weight. The lantern in my hand flickered, then died, leaving me in darkness with nothing but its eyes. I thought it would attack. I thought I would feel its teeth close on my throat. Instead, it stopped. It lowered its head, and it howled. The sound was worse than death. Low at first, then rising, splitting the air until my ears rang and my chest ached. It was grief, hunger, rage, and something older than human memory. It was the sound of the grave itself. When the howl ended, the Shuck vanished. The fog closed in. The claws stopped. I stood alone in the marsh, the silence crushing, my lantern cold in my hand. I stumbled home half dead with fear, and when I reached the door, I heard the news. A man in the village, one I had spoken to that very morning, had been found lifeless in his bed, his face pale, his lips blue, his eyes staring at something no one else could see. The Shuck hadn't come for me, not yet. It had passed the curse on to him instead, but I knew it was only a matter of time. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cottage floorboards sounded like claws. Every gust of wind against the shutters sounded like a howl. And in the blackness before dawn, I woke to find my window fogged from the outside. 2 circles, 2 red, glowing circles. Watching. Waiting. The black Shuck doesn't kill for hunger. It doesn't kill for sport. It marks you. It chooses you. And when it does, there's nothing you can do. Some say it's a guardian, that it walks with you only to warn of death already coming. But I know better. I've seen the truth in its eyes. It doesn't warn. It doesn't protect. It follows. It waits. It collects. And tonight, as I whisper these words, I hear it again. The claws on stone. The low growl beneath the wind. The scrape of breath outside my door. The Shuck has chosen me. And if you're hearing this story, if you feel the weight of eyes on the back of your neck right now, maybe it has chosen you, too. Because when you hear the howl of the black Shuck in the night, you don't forget it. You can't. And once you've heard it, once those burning red eyes have found you in the dark, you'll never escape. Not tonight. Not. Enonoda. Not ever.